Best Available Podcast, episode 33. We're making our way through March. Next week, this is the last full week of March, which is weird to say. It seems like we're just breezing through this year, already 3 months through. But Matt, we picked a good time to be a pro Oral Roberts podcast. Our fandom paid off in spades this past weekend in the tournament.
Yeah, so I think the last time we actually recorded an episode was when they won the Summit League, if we don't count the March Madness special. So we were really day one Golden Eagles fans. Max Asmus, I had no idea that was how we pronounced his name, but that's because we were day one fans, Ryan. We're in the Sweet 16. We're still alive. You and I both had Oral Roberts making it to the Sweet 16. Had them winning the whole thing because we're just day one fans. So that's been great. Ryan, one thing we didn't mention since our last time doing this, it gets dark at 7 o'clock now. I think we have to establish that daylight savings time is fantastic. This time around, not the one in November. This one is just amazing.
I've always been a proponent of daylight savings time. And I think we should just keep it like this for forever. There's no reason to set the clocks back in November. Just keep them like this. It's fine. I'd rather have the extra daylight. It makes you feel better. It's for whatever reason. I know some people, maybe their sleep schedule gets a little messed up for a couple days afterwards, but that's just, that's outweighed by the fact that the sun's out longer. You feel a lot better. I can't dig into my thesaurus for some $5 words, but you just feel better this time of year. The temperatures have been great. I've been able to walk and exercise and stuff outside. Everyone just seems more jovial. You go like, hey, how you doing? Social distance, by the way. 6 feet apart we do that. And it's great. It's an awesome time of year. I'm so excited. It's great.
Well, we're in the pinnacle of sports right now. We're approaching the Masters. We're officially hearing the Masters music. They're now mixing in some Tony Bennett music and Lady Gaga into it as well. I don't know if you picked up on that on some of their ads for commercial breaks for the tournament. So we got a nice jazzy theme going into the Masters. Got warm weather, as you said. I, Ryan, have not left my house more than 3 times in the past 2 weeks. I have been watching either basketball or on my computer working or sleeping. I have not enjoyed the warm weather. I have become like Ben Kenobi in episode 4 of Star Wars: A New Hope. Hopefully one day when you watch that, Ryan, you'll like that reference. I've become more of a guy, kind of hangs out inside, doesn't really get out that much. So I'm like Ben Kenobi right now, just hanging out. But I'll get outdoors eventually.
Well, you alluded to all the sports. There's a lot that's happened since the last time we recorded. I apologize. We weren't able to give you all an episode last week. My brand new computer had an issue, but it's all fixed up and haven't had any issues since, which is good. So we're back. We're back and ready to go. We're going to talk some college basketball. We saw the first 2 rounds of the tournament, which was a lot of fun. Friday to Monday this time instead of the typical Thursday to Sunday, so we can talk about that. NFL free agency, we would have loved to have talked about it last week, but we'll talk about it this week, and then we'll see if we fit some other stuff in there too. So we'll start with the tournament. We'll go region by region, I guess, and just I feel like that kind of makes it easier. And we'll start. You know what? Let's start in the South, where our favorite team, Oral Roberts, is. So let's start with them. Going into the tournament, Ohio State had a lot of question marks. They were kind of deemed by a lot of people to be a pretty weak 2 seed. Nobody thought Oral Roberts, even with the leading scorer in the nation, nobody thought Oral Roberts was going to be able to knock Ohio State off. And not only did they do that, they were able to defeat a pretty solid Florida team who downed Virginia Tech in the first round. And so Oral Roberts is now the second ever 15 seed to be in the Sweet 16. So Matt, we still have a lot of stuff to talk about the tournament, obviously, but that in and of itself is it really personifies what the first 2 rounds have been like for March Madness this year.
Yeah, first team since Dunk City back in 2013. Vividly remember that tournament run for them at Florida Gulf Coast. What restored some faith in me with Ohio State was the fact that they at least made it to the Big Ten final, pushed Illinois into overtime. So I'm like, okay, win a couple games, maybe luck out, get to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, whatever. And yeah, they just put a red-hot team in Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts finished fourth in the Summit League in the regular season, had a really strong Summit League tournament, as all of our listeners know, because we were talking about it live during their championship game. Listen, anytime you have a lower seed, so I'm going to upset some people. I'm more of the belief that you should get as many high seeds as possible to the second weekend. The lower seeds winning a game are great, but them winning more than one game, I kind of get a little iffy about. One of our buddies, Josh Newman, also agrees with that take as well. I think maybe one is fine, like Oral Roberts is fine, Ryan, but if we got if Ohio made it to the Sweet 16, if Abilene Christian made it, then I would kind of start to get a little iffy about it. But they're a really cool story. I mean, this is a team that wasn't verified on Twitter, their team account. So they're getting the national recognition they deserve. And it's not like they're just like a kind of a nobody team. I mean, at the beginning of the year, people thought that they could sneak in and steal a bid from South Dakota State, and that's what they did. So it's been pretty cool to see.
As I said at the start, we are a pro Oral Roberts podcast. We have been for just the longest time now, so we will be rooting for their continued success. But it's going to be tough because the team that they will be playing, Arkansas, they've looked pretty solid so far through the first two rounds. They got to play Toothpaste in round number 1, and Toothpaste put up a really good battle. But I think, Matt, we kind of see what the difference is between these low to mid majors and when they play these high major teams out of these power conferences. We just saw Arkansas kicking into another gear when they played Colgate. They just they tightened up the pressure on defense. They did whatever they wanted on offense, and they were able to dispel Colgate pretty easily, especially once the second half began. They had a tough matchup in the second round against Texas Tech, a game that Texas Tech, you could have argued they had a chance to win, but ultimately the Musselman, the Must Bus, gets the Razorbacks through. You could tell the players love Eric Musselman. Like, I would love to meet him one day. He seems like an incredible guy. So that's one of your Sweet 16 matchup, Arkansas and Oral Roberts. So not to brag, I did have Arkansas in my Final Four, so I have kind of a vested interest in them. But I really think that Arkansas has what it takes to make a run in this region based on what I saw.
Well, high-powered offense, a lot of talent. I mean, Moses Moody going to be a very much talked about name in the coming months. Listen, I mean, Eric Musselman has taken multiple programs to the Sweet 16 really since our junior year of college. So he did it with Nevada. He did it Nevada. What's the correct pronunciation for that, by the way? I have no idea.
I say Nevada.
Nevada. All right, we'll go with Nevada. You're probably right. We'll go with Nevada. So he took them there back with Jordan Caroline and the Martin twins. Then he brings this same formula to Arkansas. They get Moses Moody, get a bunch of other guys come in. And it's a successful formula that I think more coaches in college basketball should put an emphasis on. I mean, I know you and I have seen a lot of people that want to go with the transfer market method, but you can't just do that, right? So there was teams last year that just went out and got all kinds of big JUCO transfers and guys that came from other places and averaged 20 points. Doesn't always work. Missouri State, New Mexico, two recent examples of how it doesn't work. But Arkansas has done it now, and they're in the Sweet 16. And I think it's a realistic pick, Ryan, that they could make the Final Four. I think that's a solid pick by you. That a game with them and Baylor would be really good.
I think my favorite thing about the Razorbacks, I kind of alluded to earlier, you can tell that everyone is, like, they've bought in. Like, Musselman's the kind of guy, like, he's charismatic enough, like, he'll fight for his kids, and then the kids in response, like, you can tell all of them are locked in. Like, I mean, we've seen it before, these high seeds, they go down early, they struggle against the lower seeds, and they kind of just lose all their composure. They don't know what's going on, but like, you can tell, like, this is a different group of guys. Like, the chemistry, the mood around the team, like, they all have the right attitude that they need to survive in March. And I mean, I'm excited to see. I mean, we are pro Oral Roberts, but I think it's very likely to say that Arkansas is going to move on to the Elite Eight. And as you said, if they get to beat Baylor, that's going to be a fun matchup. Baylor was a team that a lot of people had question marks about because of their COVID pause before the tournament. And then coming out, they didn't really look the same, but they beat Hartford pretty easily, especially once the second half started. They beat Wisconsin. Wisconsin did not look very good against Baylor, which wasn't too surprising. And now Baylor looks like the team everyone thought could make a run.
Yeah, I mean, I always say for these number one seeds, especially this year, coming off a COVID pause late in the year, these are kind of like building block games. It kind of resembles like your non-conference schedule. Get some low majors in there, get a weaker high major in there, kind of build the momentum, and that's what Baylor's doing. And they kind of got the luck of the draw in the sense that you're playing a Villanova team without its point guard, with not so much depth there. Baylor, one of the more deeper teams in this region, so I would say both those teams, Baylor and Arkansas, got the best possible matchup in the Sweet 16 that they could have asked for.
I think if we learned anything from this South region, Matt, and I want to bring up the Villanova thing, we cannot bet against Jay Wright anymore.
Nope.
I mean, you'd think a guy winning 2 national titles in 3 years would be enough of a reason not to doubt him, even if they are losing, or they are without Gillespie, their star point guard, but every analyst going into the weekend said, listen, Winthrop, hammer it in. No way Villanova wins this game. Take Winthrop. They're going to make it into the Sweet 16. Not only did Villanova beat Winthrop, but they beat a team in North Texas that pretty handily defeated Purdue in the first round. So now Villanova has made it back to the Sweet 16. They do face a tough test in Baylor, but I think it's very remarkable what Jay Wright's been able to do with that team, with having to redo the rotations and stuff without Gillespie and dealing with other stuff, as you said. I think it's impressive that he was able to take this team to the Sweet 16 after everyone wrote them off.
Well, it's pretty funny because when we were back in high school, they used to get some higher seeds and they would lose in the first weekend. And everyone was kind of like, well, what's going on, Jay Wright? Like, why can't they take the next step? And then when we got to college, they started rattling off deep runs. They won 2 national titles. Okay, this is Villanova. Like, this is what Jay Wright has been building towards. And we're kind of at this point now, Ryan, where the bracket comes out every year and every analyst just looks at the 5-12 and automatically will just say the 12. I don't know why. They say, oh, the math backs it up. I mean, listen, I don't know the exact numbers in front of me, but I can't imagine over the past couple of years it's been in favor of 12 seeds. I think the 5 seeds are starting to reclaim some of their pedigree, I guess. But again, Jay Wright's not losing to a team out of the Big South. Like, you and I know this because we're from the Philly area, kind of know what they're about. They were not losing to a team from the Big South or a team from Conference USA, for that matter. So I'm happy they've made it. I mean, it's good to have local basketball be represented as we go deeper into the tournament. Obviously, our other team, the Drexel Dragons, did not have such a good draw. But, yeah, people need to stop doubting Jay Wright. Guy just finds a way to win.
Well, you brought up Drexel. They were in the Midwest region, so if a 15 seed making the Sweet 16 wasn't enough chaos for you, the Midwest region had even more chaos. Your Sweet 16 in the Midwest is a 2, an 8, an 11, and a 12 seed, which nobody would have expected coming into the tournament. Everyone pretty much, I mean, I know I'm using hyperbole, not everybody, but a lot of people said that Illinois was almost a lock to at least make the Final Four out of that region, and they were the 1 seed. They ended up being the 1 seed. There's always one. They were the 1 seed that lost in round number 2, and they lost to a Loyola Chicago team, and I know you're going to go into this. They were underseeded at 8. This team should not have been an 8 seed. You can make the case maybe it was a little unfair for Illinois to have to play a team like this in the second round. Regardless, Loyola Chicago moved on to the Sweet 16. Sister Jean's still kicking. So, Matt, I know you personally, I do too, but I know you personally, you love this Loyola team. I mean, you talked about them a month ago, how this might be better than their Final Four team a few years back. And, I mean, they've proven it so far.
Yeah, I think I've learned my lesson trying to pick against Sister Jean. She must have heard that I haven't been to church that much recently, so she wanted to end my Illinois run. I want to first talk about Illinois. Anyone that's followed the website, I wrote about them back in August. I've been really high on this team. Ayo Dosunmu, Kofi Coburn, two pro-level guys. Andre Corbello, really solid season. Adam Miller, really good shooter. But listen, Brad Underwood, I think, is doing a good job rebuilding that program. But in that game, I mean, it was almost the same stuff every possession up the court. And they kept getting beat. And we talked about this briefly, but Loyola Chicago, Ryan, is the number one defense in the country. Like, they're the best team in the entire country. And if you're going up against that and, trying to run a high ball screen or, you're kind of getting trapped around half court, like certain stuff like that, if they keep doing that, if you're not able to kind of run your offense and you're kind of just having Corbello dribble around the court and hope he gets something, it just kind of looked disorganized. I don't think they really, I don't want to say they didn't make adjustments, but at some points, I mean, they just looked really confused by this Loyola team. I mean, they were in the right spot at every point in the game on defense, showing why they were the best defense in the country. I think Porter Moser did a really good job, showing his resume for Indiana, being in the state. I think if you're officials in Bloomington, I don't think you let him leave the state without him being your head coach. An 8 seed. Listen, wasn't a fair draw for Illinois. This is a team you face in like the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. Loyola is much better than an 8. I know you and I talked before we got on. There's a couple teams that I don't know how they got a seed higher than Loyola. Just looking at it, I would put them over Clemson. I'd put them over UConn. I'd put them over a lot of these teams. BYU. Just looking at the bottom part of the bracket. So I think the Missouri Valley needs some better credit. And I'll finish this long-winded point with this. You and I come from a mid-major team. This mid-major bias is still prevalent because they didn't have the guts to put them any higher than an 8 seed because they were from the Missouri Valley. Everything I just talked about, the number one defense in the country. And as a result, the committee's bias against these mid-majors just took away one of their biggest money grab teams in the second round as a 1 seed. So there you go.
Well, it won't be Illinois playing Oregon State. It'll be Loyola. Oregon State, the 1-12 seed this year that actually won their 5-12 matchup. Oregon State down Tennessee pretty easily. The final score was 70-56. I personally was not very intrigued by Oregon State coming into the tournament. I told Matt this before the show. I usually don't like to pick teams who got through their conference tournament but didn't look super great beforehand. Oregon State proved to be the exception to that, and not only did they beat Tennessee, they defeated the likely number 1 overall pick in the upcoming draft in Cade Cunningham and Oklahoma State in the second round. So Oregon State has gone on a heck of a run to make the Sweet 16, and we're going to talk about the Conference of Champions a lot more as we continue this, but Matt, Oregon State has been a phenomenal representative for the Conference of Champions.
Yeah, and let me just preface by saying they're going to get absolutely torched by Loyola next weekend. But they, I agree with your take that teams like this that kind of move their way into the tournament, maybe pump the brakes a little bit. It's the same thing with Georgetown. Both of those teams, Ryan, were picked last in their preseason polls. So, something clearly isn't there, right? I mean, you get hot at the right time, sure, but something still clearly is missing if you were picked 12th or last in your preseason poll. But Ethan Thompson's a really good player. They have a lot of other solid role players. Wayne Tinkle, listen, I think he's a good coach. I just think, being in the Conference of Champions, as you said, it's going to be hard to build a program there. I also think being in the same state as Oregon really kind of hurts that program. So I think he's a coach that is starting to gain a little recognition just in terms of, he's trying. But I was disappointed in Oklahoma State. When you have Cade Cunningham there and the talent around him, I expected them to beat Oregon State. But they never really were in it either. I mean, except for that one point where they hit back-to-back threes in the second half to make it a single-digit deficit. I mean, that was the only time I think that they were really in striking distance. So, yeah, hot team, but our Ramblers, Ryan, nothing stopping Sister Jean from the Final Four. But she did have them losing in the Elite Eight, though. So I think we do need to talk about how Sister Jean has them losing in the Elite Eight. So,
well,
watch out.
If they do make the Elite Eight, they're going to either play Syracuse or Houston. Houston, so they were the one of two seeds to make it to the Sweet 16. They took care of business against Cleveland State. They should have lost against Rutgers. I said after Rutgers' first game against Clemson that they were better than Houston. I'll still die on that hill. They should have beaten Houston. They had the opportunity. They just faded down the stretch, which is unfortunate. Anything that could have gone wrong for Rutgers, it went wrong. So I feel bad for them, but whatever. Houston made it on to the Sweet 16, and they go up against Syracuse. The zone strikes again. Buddy Boeheim strikes. He is now this tournament's Jimmer. I got to say, this is going to sound bad. I'm sure the guy's a very nice individual, gentleman, scholar, really cool kid. I got real tired of seeing his face on my television screen. That's not because I picked San Diego State to go to the Elite Eight. It definitely not because of that. But I know I'll get to a point in a couple days when I'll appreciate what he's doing, but in the moment, it was pissing me off a lot. But Syracuse's zone struck again, and as an 11th seed, they're making another run. We just saw this recently in a tournament not too long ago where they get in as a low seed and they make a run, and it's happening again. Matt, I think Houston should be really worried about this matchup. I personally don't have any faith in them after what I saw against Rutgers.
No, I think Syracuse is going to win this game. I wouldn't be surprised if Syracuse made it to the Final Four. Talk about a team that got screwed by COVID, by the way. It's San Diego State. One of the best teams in the country almost all of last season, right? They're going to be a 1 seed. One of the best seasons ever in program history. You have a guy, Malachi Flynn, there who's really good. Some other talented players. He leaves for graduation. He played in a G League this season. Matt Mitchell was still there, Jordan Shackle, but you get in as a 6 seed just because you don't have Flynn and some of the other pieces. Then you get Syracuse in the first round, which is, as you mentioned, kind of a tough draw for anybody. So if there's any team that got screwed over the most by COVID, it's San Diego State as number 1, and number 1A would be Dayton. But in any case, Ryan, the zone strikes again. It's just such a unique look. I've mentioned this before. You don't practice for teams like that. The zone isn't what it used to be, though. At least this season, they have a little bit more offensive punch. They're not as long on the baseline as they were on that 2-3 zone. But listen, I mean, they're shooting the lights out. Like, I don't know how much, because we got all 4 games going on, I don't know how much you caught of some of those Syracuse games, but they were hitting some shots.
Oh, I know.
They're a team that I would not want to play. And I agree with you that Houston really needs to kind of take this week to figure it out, but I don't think they have enough offense. And this is crazy to say against a Syracuse team, but I don't think they have enough offensively to keep up with the Orange. I mean, you're getting shots from Girard, you're getting shots from Boeheim. I mean, Dolajai's hitting a couple. Like, they're just a really good team. And I said this to you back in February when they were playing North Carolina, which was their quad one win of the year. I said, I don't know, Ryan, they're going to sneak their way in. And it's just like a habit at this point. Yeah, it really wouldn't shock me if they made the Final Four. It really wouldn't. You're gonna have to get used to Buddy's face for the next 2 weeks.
I guess. Well, you know what? I will say, he's gonna have a very prominent role in the one shining moment video at the end of the tournament. I think that's when I'll appreciate it. That when I see him hit the crazy shot that he hit, or crazy shots, I should say. Like okay, I respect you. I guess we'll go clockwise at this point. I think it just makes the most sense. The East region, it had a little bit of chaos in one pod, but for the most part, it was chalk. We'll start at the top. Michigan and Florida State, the 1 and 4 seeds, will meet up in the Sweet 16. The only 1-4 matchup in the entire bracket. Michigan soundly defeated Texas Southern. They defeated UCLA by 8 points. Meanwhile, Florida State, they were on the ropes against UNC Greensboro. Greensboro kept it close for a while, but eventually Florida State, the Seminoles, were able to make it through. And then they defeated Colorado pretty easily in the second round. Colorado, they hit a lot of their shots against Georgetown, and they couldn't transfer that same percentage against Florida State, which isn't too surprising. So Michigan, Florida State, Matt, I'd say that some people didn't think this matchup would happen. People didn't know what to make of Michigan, especially. People thought that they could lose to either LSU or St. Bonaventure, but they made it through. They've looked pretty solid, and I'm excited to see this. This is one of my more intriguing matchups of the Sweet 16 weekend.
Well, for the people that like the Cinderella runs, how much better does Michigan, Florida State sound compared to Loyola Chicago and Oregon State, right? I mean, this packs a punch, this game. No disrespect to Loyola Chicago, but they just got dragged in as the reference. In any case, Florida State, you and I are both high on them. I think you and I both have them in the Final Four. I think this is a tough matchup for Michigan. LSU is a really tough matchup for them too, and they really pushed them. That was a really entertaining game, like a high-quality basketball game yesterday from start to finish. If they had Isaiah Livers, I'd probably lean more towards Michigan. But Florida State, man. I mean, the ageless wonder, Leonard Hamilton. Again, I say it, the man looks 20 years younger than what he is. He's got size, length on his roster, depth. They could switch 1 through 5, which makes them really, really good defensively against a team like Michigan, who has a really potent offense. If you could switch 1 through 5, you're going to be able to keep up a lot and prevent some easy looks, some tougher looks. So yeah, this will be a really good matchup, though. And I want to set the table, Ryan, for you to pat yourself on the back for the next little pod that we're going to talk about. I want you to start off by patting yourself on the back because you did call one of these games, and it was a really good call. So I want you to go ahead, pat yourself on the back.
Before I do that, I did want to give credit to Leonard Hamilton. You say he's ageless. The man is coaching in his 70s with a ruptured Achilles, and he's still walking around on the sideline.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, the guy's first. He's in his 70s. So he looks like he's in his 50s. Mm-hmm. Ruptured Achilles, and he's just walking around. Like nothing happened. So if you mentioned you want to meet Eric Musselman, I want to meet Leonard Hamilton. He's number one on my list for that regard.
He's not doing what Ron Hunter did several years back when he had that little doctor's stool on the sideline. He's powering through. I respect it. I respect Ron Hunter too for what he did, especially because he fell off the stool when RJ hit that shot. But okay, I'm gonna get to this because I did call it, not the UCLA one. I had BYU getting to the Sweet 16. We're not going to talk about that right now. Abilene Christian defeated Texas. I think this was the most anxious I had felt during a game the entire first round because I had selected it, and they almost, I'm not going to say they almost blew it, but they almost came back down to earth. Matt, you made the point before the show. They shot 29%, but the reason they won and the reason I picked them is because Texas turns the ball over a ton. And I tweeted this out the night of the game. Texas looked like me if I was out on a basketball court, and that's not a good thing. If you're the 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, they turned the ball over. They were dribbling off their shoes. They were just making bad passes. They didn't look like a 3 seed. And I said in the group chat, I don't know how a team with this guard talent struggles to score over 50 against Abilene Christian. It doesn't make sense. But having said that, I'm happy I picked Abilene Christian, so I want all of you to congratulate me if you ever see me in person for picking that. And their reward for beating Texas was to get throttled by UCLA, who has made a run out of the play-in game out of the first 4. So not only did UCLA defeat March Izzo, not only did they defeat 6-seed BYU, who was a 6 seed, well, let's not overlook that, they were a 6 seed. They also have now won against Abilene Christian by 20. So they have made it to the Sweet 16, and Matt, I've become a big UCLA fan after watching them for 3 games. I think it's going to be tough for them to beat Alabama, who made the Sweet 16 out of the bottom half of this bracket, but they're a lot of fun to watch, man. They are a fun team. They've been a fun team to watch.
Yeah, so to the Abilene Christian point first, I remember scrolling through your bracket, checking out, everybody in our group chat, seeing what everyone picked. I remember seeing that, and I'm like, I could really see that happening, but I didn't have the guts to go out there and do it, and you did, and I want to give you the props for that. I did not have the guts. I saw a scenario to where, because you and we all in the group chat talked about Shaka Smart's track record at Texas. He won the NIT the one year, that's great, but there's not really much else to show for it in terms of the NCAA tournament. Texas shot, 45% from the field? They shot, really well, but they just didn't get as many opportunities because, Abilene Christian plays this style of defense to where the best way to just compensate for your disparity of talent is to just throw everything at you on defense, right? You're going to trap everywhere. You're going to press everywhere. You're going to jump passing lanes. If you give up a point, whatever, they're just going for it. And I respect it. I know we're on a time crunch because got to talk about NFL free agency, Ryan, but how is the Shaka Smart thing any different than the Rick Barnes thing? Rick Barnes, I think, at least took them to a Final Four, right? He at least had some tournament success. I mean, what is any different here for this program? He's brought in some high recruited players, but then they're losing to teams like Abilene Christian, who 8 years ago, or however many years ago when he took the job, weren't even a Division I program. So, I don't know. I'm kind of just at that point with Texas to where, you mentioned all this talent, and every year it seems like one and done.
Well, you brought up Josh Newman's name before. He had an astonishing statistical tweet after the game, and it was Shaka Smart has won 2. I'm going to hold up the fingers for those of you watching the video. 2 NCAA tournament games in the decade since taking VCU to the Final Four. None of those have come since 2013. It seems like people like the idea of Shaka Smart more than what actually happens when he coaches in the tournament. People said, he grew his hair out. Watch out for Texas this year. And then they lost in the first round. So I think, as we learned in the South, to not bet against Jay Wright anymore, we need to start betting against Shaka Smart until he proves us wrong.
But here's the thing. You're in one of the hot zones of basketball recruiting, right? You talk about, basketball hotbeds. We're in a very good region in the Northeast. You got some really good players down in Texas, spread throughout, the Sun Belt area, like Florida, some players down there. I don't know, man. You got to do better than this. I'm not taking away from Abilene Christian, but they shot 29% from the field and you lost. I don't know. A good pick by you, though. And to the point on UCLA, I'm a big Mick Cronin guy. I know I've been sending you every time they win. I send you the tweet that John Rothstein puts out. UCLA, people forget they were a top 20 team at one point. They were a really solid team. They have some. They lost Chris Smith at one point. They had another guy enroll early, reclassify to come in to kind of fill that void a little bit. I love Johnny Juzang. I love Jaime Jaquez. Tiger Campbell, I think, is a really, really, really good point guard. Yeah, they're good. I could see them beating Alabama. I know you think you're sticking with your gut there. I have Alabama. Well, I had Alabama beating Texas, but now since that's kind of neutralized, I could change my pick a little bit. Those play-in teams, Ryan, when people are going to fill out their brackets, look out for a play-in team because more often than not, they're in the Sweet 16. So that'll be a fun matchup.
One final region in the men's tournament. This one had pretty much the least amount of chaos. There was one big upset, and that we'll talk about in a second. So first off, actually, we'll start at the bottom of the bracket. This is really where the Conference of Champions flex their muscles. 6-seeded USC defeated Drake, and then they demolished Kansas, one of the worst losses in Kansas's program's history, 85-51. This is a Kansas team that struggled against Eastern Washington in the first round. Well, they did eventually, do what they needed to do down the stretch, but USC made it to the Sweet 16. They're going to play their Conference of Champions peer, Oregon, who defaulted into the second round because unfortunately VCU had COVID issues. It was going to happen eventually, and surprisingly it happened in the first round. I didn't think it was going to happen in the first round. And Oregon's prize for that was playing the number 2 seed Iowa, who was pretty weak as a 2 seed if you looked at some metrics, especially in the defensive side. And we saw that yesterday as Oregon defeated Iowa 95-80. Oregon could not miss, and they were tenacious on the defensive end. So we have a Conference of Champions Sweet 16 matchup. Bill Walton had 5 Conference of Champions teams in his Final Four. Some of them are still alive. So let's talk about this one, Matt. I asked you in our March Madness stream, what do you think about Oregon? Can Duarte and the guards kind of carry them? So far, it's looked pretty good, and they get to play one of the best players in college basketball this year in Evan Mobley. So that'll be kind of a fun matchup, in my opinion.
Yeah, they absolutely torched Iowa. I mean, you look at the final score and you say, oh, well, it's 15. I mean, I don't think Iowa really had a chance for a majority of that game. The way Oregon was playing, the confidence. I mean, listen, 10 days off, you come back, you score 95 points against the number 2 seed. You got to win in my book. One quick point on the VCU thing. It was heartbreaking to see. People did praise the Atlantic 10 for moving they played all their conference tournament in Virginia. Then they waited a week and then played the tournament championship in Dayton. But I read a tweet somewhere that there was like some high school tournaments or something there, and not a lot of people wearing masks in hotels and stuff. So, that's a story. The Atlantic 10 might have dropped the ball there. With I think they're a better team in VCU. We don't obviously know how that happened, but how they ended up getting the COVID. But in any case, that'll be a team to watch out next year because they'll be very good again. In any case, USC, Ryan, you were high on USC. I was also high on them. The Mobley brothers, you mentioned Evan. His brother's very good as well. They have some solid guard play. We talked about the Dunk City team. Their coach is the USC coach now, Andy Enfield. So nice storyline there. He's in the Sweet 16 along with the second ever 15 seed to make it to the Sweet 16. So there's a little, CBS broadcast tidbit for you that probably won't get brought up. In any case, Oregon, I think, is going to make the Elite Eight. I think they're going to give Gonzaga a big run for their money. I don't know how much time we're going to spend on Gonzaga. They won 2 games. They won them both by double digits. Yay! Sure. Pat yourself on the back again, Ryan. You got another upset.
I was just going to, in Gonzaga, they looked like the number 1 overall seed. Not surprising. The other pot in that, Creighton, people wanted to write them off real quickly. They said, oh, put the Gauchos in through the Sweet 16. It's going to happen, guys. And then I'll give them credit. It was close. They should have won. I will give them credit. They should have won the game. The guy had the perfect look at the end, and the shot just didn't fall. That was close. But then Creighton won the game they were supposed to win against Ohio. Ohio did upset Virginia. That was also a little too close for my liking as someone that picked Ohio. But it was nice to see people learn who Justin Patton was. That's always fun. Of course, Ohio did not have enough for Creighton. Creighton had a bad shooting performance in round 1. They're not going to have back-to-back bad shooting performances, so it made sense that they were able to win in round 2. So Gonzaga and Creighton, Matt. I think Gonzaga's probably going to win this one by double digits too.
Yeah, I would argue that Oklahoma will put up a better fight than Creighton will. It's funny, Ohio kind of came full circle. So back in late November when I was really excited and I wrote 20,000 words on college hoops, did that and then watched a bunch of games and didn't really, spend time with family during Thanksgiving, which we shouldn't have because that was during, COVID. But in any case, Ohio played Illinois really tight, and their coach and really their players too, they all thought they should have beaten Illinois back on that first weekend. And Jason Preston got a lot of a lot of love and like mock drafts and stuff. And then everyone kind of forgot about Ohio. Then they go into the MAC tournament, MAC with 1A, for our Monmouth fans listening. They go into the MAC with 1A tournament. They win that. People start to remember who Jason Preston is again. And then, sure enough, he kind of became one of the mid-major stars of this tournament. So it was kind of cool to see them come full circle. So, nice little storyline for them, for sure.
So, I'm going to give you an opportunity because ESPN gives you a chance to do a second chance bracket in case your bracket's so messed up after the first 2 rounds that you need a chance to maybe try to save some face. A lot of people's brackets are that way because of, Illinois was a prime suspect. Kansas, Ohio State, they were prime suspects from what I could tell. So I'll give you a chance. I'll give you a second chance. What is your new Final Four?
Well, I have 3 of the 4 still in, so let me ride with them just to be consistent. So Gonzaga. So here's another. So we talked about Nevada and Nevada. It's Gonzaga, right? Not Gonzaga. It's Gonzaga, right? Are we in agreement on that
I say
one?
Gonzaga because people call them the Zags.
Yes, I agree with you, Gonzaga. I heard Gonzaga a couple times on the broadcast. I forget which game. I don't think it's that, but wanted to ask somebody else. So I have them, Baylor, Florida State. Going to stick with those. Give me Syracuse, Ryan. Give me the orange. That would be. I want you to watch Buddy Boeheim more than you have to, Ryan. You're going to love him eventually.
So, as with Matt, I still have 3 of my own in as well. I still have Gonzaga, Florida State, and Arkansas. So I'll stick with them, and I will go with Loyola out of the Midwest region. So next time we record this, we'll be able to pretty much. I mean, we will do some. I'll talk about that later. I want to talk about the women's bracket just real quick because their tournament is going on simultaneously, which I hope that people would know about. It was pretty much chalk in the first round. It was fully chalk in 2 of the regions. In the Mercado region, Belmont upset Gonzaga. So there we go. Little connection there. BYU defeated Rutgers. That was sad to see. I was very upset as someone that lives in New Jersey. 2 heartbreakers for Rutgers over the weekend. And then in the Alamo region, you had Wright State upsetting Arkansas. And that was it for upsets. So now we're into the second round. We actually have games going on right now. We've had games that have already finished. We do have 2 Sweet 16 matchups already set. We have South Carolina and Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech upset West Virginia. And then we have Baylor and Michigan. Michigan upset Tennessee. So Connecticut and Syracuse, Stanford and Oklahoma State. Connecticut and Stanford are both the 1 seeds. They're both playing right now. I'd like to think they'll both make it through. But yeah, I mean, I've seen some of the women's tournament so far. It's not too surprising that early on it's chalk, but I think as we get through this, we'll really start to see some competitive basketball. I'm excited to see, Sweet 16, Elite 8. That's when it really starts to get like really uber competitive. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah. So the men's and women's tournaments are kind of reversed because there's all the excitement on day 1 and 2 of the men's tournament. And then people kind of, I feel like, lose interest as it goes on. But I feel like the women's tournament gains momentum, as you said, because you get a lot of those really, really powerful matchups as you go on. Because you get a lot of chalk early on. I mean, I would argue most of the Final Fours over the past decade, the better ones have come on the women's side. I mean, the buzzer beater from Arike Ogunbowale the 1 year, I mean, it's electric. I love South Carolina. If we're talking about teams that we like to win, I'm a huge Dawn Staley fan, always have been. I think South Carolina is just the better team. People talked about NC State because not a lot of people had them being one of the top 4 teams in the nation. They're the number 1 overall seed. They won today against South Florida. They got a little bit of a run for their money there. Obviously, Stanford's a popular pick as well, but as a Coach Staley fan, I like South Carolina. But again, you mentioned it, the second weekend of this tournament, you're basically getting every top seed going at it. So it's going to be a lot of close games. So sometimes there's a little bit of blowouts week 1, but it's going to get really electric for sure.
I'm looking through the bracket now. I'm trying to see which teams still have the men's and the women's in it. Michigan and Baylor obviously still in it on both sides. Alabama is still in it. UCLA,
Oregon,
Oregon State. I think that's it. So, yeah, okay, yeah. So, that's actually kind of cool to track to see which. I mean, we'll see maybe if we can get a double winner. I mean, maybe that would be kind of cool. But still have some Conference of Champions representatives. So we're going to root for the Conference of Champions. This is a pro Conference of Champions podcast. The Pac-12 is truly the Conference of Champions. There's some slander going on in our group chat that the Pac-12 is not the Conference of Champions because they haven't won basketball or football recently. Well, there's other sports out there that they're good at. So that's that. So, Matt, we could not talk about free agency for the NFL last week as it was going on, but we'll talk about it this week because we do need to get it out there. And it was a big time for you personally. I mean, one person on this podcast had a team that had money to spend, not a team that had to cut money. So we'll start with you. The New England Patriots have probably been the most active team through free agency. They've signed a lot of guys. They've even made some trades. That one of the trades was a little surprising, but you signed the two top tight ends on the market in Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. You signed a receiver who still had issues last season, but he had a lot of splash plays, so it made up for it in Nelson Aguilar. You re-signed your quarterback in Cam Newton for 1 year, a heavily incentivized deal. You signed Kyle Van Noy, Jalen Mills, Matt Judon, all guys to kind of shore up the defensive side. You trade for Trent Brown, and you re-signed David Andrews. There's other stuff that I'm not even going to talk about, but you did a lot of stuff so far. How are you feeling right now with how your organization has attacked free agency this year?
I mean, I feel great. Which trade didn't you like, or that was surprising?
But the Trent Brown one, it was like that's more like I don't know what the Raiders are doing, but
yeah. So I feel great. It's funny because I talked about Ohio coming full circle in the media. So back in October, Bill Belichick says we're capped out. We don't have any money to spend. So then everyone, as a result, criticizes them, say, oh, well, this is your fault. You need to go out and spend money to make this team good. Not even just Boston media, just like ESPN, like all these other networks. So then we get to March, right? And their start, day one, shelling out money. Like Jalen Mills, you want to come play for the Patriots? Sure, here you go. Like, hey, Ted Karras, you want to come back and play for us? Yeah, sure. Shell out some money there. Judon, the names go on and on. Henry, Jonnu Smith. And now I'm seeing people and I'm hearing people say this to me and they send articles. Everyone says, oh, well, they have some of the worst free agent signings because they give all this guaranteed money. Well, you just criticized us back in October for not spending any money and being all capped out. So you can't have it both ways, NFL media. I just want to start by saying that. Also, you have to pay. Kirk Cousins at one point was one of the most paid quarterbacks in the NFL. Same with Jimmy Garoppolo. You have to overpay because in 2 years, the Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry contracts are going to look small compared to what some of these other tight ends are going to get, right? It's just part of the NFL cycle. So to anyone out there trying to push down the Patriots because they don't want to see them good again, stop. Like, they obviously still have to put it out there on the field. I hope it's not like the dream team scenario, Ryan, with the Eagles. I really hope we're not approaching that territory, but you readdress the offense. People criticize Bill for the wide receivers he picked up on the free agent market. They said, well, he misjudged the market in that regard. He's never going to go after these big-name receivers. He never has. He never will. You get Aguilar. You're banking on something there. They tried to trade for Kendrick Bourne twice, so that explains that move. They were never going to go after the top guys. So people need to stop trying to nitpick at this. At the end of the day, you got all these people. It's going to be great. You replenish the roster. They were a 7-win team without any of it, so I assume it'll be at least better with it.
I saw people complaining like, oh, the Patriots, they never used to be an organization that had to spend this much money in free agency. You can tell that they're not the same that they used to be. I think that's kind of a flawed argument for a number of reasons. Um, I saw a lot of people complaining about the amount of money that was being spent too by the Patriots. I don't know if people think that Bill and Robert Kraft just like fell off the back of a truck or something and just lost their ability. Like they're not idiots. They're doing this for a reason. Not only because they had money to spend, but also I think they're pretty well aware that the cap is going to go up exponentially when these new TV deals are signed. They're not just giving out this money and expecting that the cap's going to stay stagnant. Like as you made the point with the tight ends, like the contracts aren't going to look as bad as what the next tight end contracts are going to be. Well, that's the same across the board. I mean, all these contracts are going to look fine once that cap goes up. It's not going to be an issue. They're easy to get out of. You have voidable years. A lot of them are incentive based. They didn't do anything wrong. They improved the team. This is what you want your organization to do. If you have a lot of money and you need to improve the team, sign players that are going to improve the product. And that's what they did. I don't get what the issue is.
I mean, I don't either, but a lot of people do. You mentioned the flexibility of almost all of these contracts. I think the only one that's not as flexible that I would have wanted it to be was the Aguilar one. But again, if anyone watched the Patriots, right, I watched every game last year, except for the first game because I was at work. But I watched almost every game. You don't know what we had on the field. It was Demir Bird, Dalton Keene, Devin Asiasi, Ryan Izzo, Jacoby Myers, and like Dante Moncrief because Edelman was hurt most of the year. If you knew, for anyone listening, if you know any of those players that I just named, congratulations, because I didn't before this season. I don't know. Like, they could have signed me and you to be it, and it would be better production than what we had last year at the offensive position. I was kind of surprised that Hunter Henry came in, right? Because he came out and said he wanted to go somewhere with a really good quarterback, and he ended up, and it's no disrespect to Cam Newton, but I would have thought he would have went somewhere else. But he came there for the winning culture. They're going to use the two tight end set again because they have two guys that could actually run and catch the ball, which will be nice. Yeah, I saw nothing wrong with any of it. People criticized it. I think the funniest tweet, I don't want to spend too much time on the Patriots, just because I sound like a biased fan, but the funniest tweet I saw was when, I think it was from one of the writers for the Globe. They're like, oh, well, you're not supposed to go out and get guys coming off the best season of their career because you're going to have to pay them all this money because they're coming off that career best season. I'm like, then who are you supposed to sign? Are you not supposed to sign the good players right now? Are you supposed to sign, some random guy and hope he's good in 3 years? Am I wrong in thinking that? Like, how ridiculous is that train of thought? That you don't want to go out and get the best guys and have to pay for the best. Because now you're going back into the same level of thinking that people criticize Belichick for years of being cheap. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, I've seen a lot of bad takes that are going to be exposed by the time October rolls around. And I also, I know there's a common mantra of, oh, well, if Bill wants these players, there's a reason for it. They're going to be great. I think that's kind of stupid. But he's not signing guys who he doesn't think can contribute positively. He's not, Bob Kraft ain't opening up his leather wallet to give these people money for no reason. Like this, there's a reason they did everything they're doing. They're the best organization we've seen in professional sports in our lifetime and in most people's lifetimes. Maybe just give them the benefit of the doubt after one bad year. I think that's the best way to go about it. Another team that was very active so far in the free agency market has been still in the Northeast, the New York Giants. They signed one of the best receivers and one of the best players on the market in Kenny Golladay to a 3-year, $54 million contract. You sign another receiver in John Ross. You bring in a tight end in Kyle Rudolph to pair him with Evan Ingram. You get Leonard Williams signed on a new contract. You just signed Adoree Jackson today as we're recording this. 3 years, $39 million, or yesterday maybe. I don't know. I've lost track of time. Regardless, the way I look at it, Matt, and I said this in the group chat, and I know one other person in the group chat agrees because it's what he texted as the resident Giants fan. None of this matters if Daniel Jones doesn't take a leap forward, and I personally don't think that he will. It's great that they're spending all this money. it doesn't do anything for me. Like, I don't care. Like, what does this do for them, really? It doesn't move the needle. I still think they're a 7-win team. This doesn't make them better unless Jones takes a Josh Allen-esque leap, and that's rare enough as it is. I don't think it matters. I don't think he's going to be able to.
Well, I think there's also differences. I mean, Josh Allen's arm talent alone will win him multiple games in the NFL. I think Daniel Jones, the issue has been for the longest time the turnovers, the fumbles, the interceptions, whatever, tripping before you get to the end zone, just, goofy plays that result in a negative outcome. And listen, you definitely improved the offense. There's no doubt about it. And I think this creates a scenario, as you said, to where there's no excuses, because another year of development, another year of camp, right? Hopefully this should be sort of a semi-normal training camp by the time we get to July, right? Apparently, July and August, we're going to start getting back to somewhat normal routines. So theoretically, he's going to be around the facility more, around these players more. I will say, though, there are some injury risks with some of the receivers they brought in. I think that's worth noting. With that being said, though, Ryan, I mean, how much is this going to impact Darius Slayton's playing time? I mean, apparently he's just such a big piece to the offense. But in any case, you have Shepard there, Slayton, you bring in Galladay, Ross. I mean, I think it moves the needle as far as Daniel Jones is willing to push it. So I agree with you there. How far that goes, I don't know. But it also helps when you're in the same division with a guy coming off of a brutal foot injury, a team with no idea where they're going, and then a team that has Ryan Fitzpatrick as their quarterback. So you got a chance.
People call him Danny Dimes. I call him Danny Pennies because he stinks. I want to move to the West Coast real quick to talk about a couple teams. One we referenced a little bit earlier, and that is the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't really know what Gruden and Mayock are doing over there. They got rid of their basically entire offensive line. They signed Yannick Ngakoue and Kenyon Drake and John Brown. I just, their defense has been a major issue. So to address that, they got rid of their offensive line and they've signed one edge rusher. I mean, I don't know if I'm missing something, Matt. It's just I don't know what they're trying to accomplish over there. It doesn't make much sense to me.
Well, it's a bold strategy, Ryan, to go out there with no offensive line in hopes of winning a football game. It's not going to make Derek Carr look any better, that's for sure. I mean, if this is Gruden's, 4D chess move of trying to get Derek Carr out of there and get in a quarterback that he likes, which is usually like a 35-year-old veteran, then yeah, that's the only scenario I could think of, right? It's the only, just to make him look bad enough to where they could put in Nathan Peterman, because we know how much he likes Nathan Peterman. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, Zach. I don't know what the Raiders are doing. You had a pretty decent team for a while, but then you just gave away. You basically gave me Trent Brown, so I texted him. I said, thanks, man. Really appreciate that. The good thing, though, is they got out of his contract, though. Some of they did have some beefy contracts on the payroll. So if you're trying to shed, everyone's trying to shed cap now, right? So that's what your Birds are doing. I guess that's what the Raiders are trying to do to get out of some of these bad money deals. But yeah, it's a bold strategy to trade or release your entire offensive line.
I think, Gruden still has like 6 years left on that contract.
At least.
God bless. Another team on the West Coast that I wanted to talk about, not for the stuff that they've done, but for their complete inactivity, is the Seattle Seahawks. And I think it's a little weird that after you have this entire story come out about how your franchise quarterback is unhappy, that he's not involved in decisions, people don't take his input, he doesn't feel like enough has been done to improve the team, your response is to sign Gerald Everett as a tight end. And okay, I know they traded for Gabe Jackson, but I think I saw a report that they re-signed Chris Carson. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know
They're
if they're
running
intentionally trying him to. I don't know if they're intentionally trying to make Russell Wilson like do something that'll get him like his contract voided so they can move on. But this isn't helping.
I'll tell you exactly what they're doing. They're running it back. It's what they do every year with the same roster. I mean, if you go back to like the beginning of our college years, Ryan, how different does that roster really look in terms of some of the key pieces? I know obviously they've had to rebuild some of their defense, but the same kind of formula. They're just running it back again, over and over and over again, seeing if it works this time around. To their credit, it won them a Super Bowl, but not so much since. I don't get the Carson re-signing, especially when you have a couple guys coming back off of injury. You know, you could get Carlos Hyde on some cheap deal probably. Just let Russ Cook go out and get him a receiver, right? I mean, we talked about this receiver market, this receiver draft class. I mean, the options were there to go out and get him some weapons. You know, maybe get a couple guys on defense to shore that up a little bit, but it's more the same. It's what it's been, right? I mean, they're like the NFC version of the Patriots, except they don't win as much. It's just the same thing over and over again, and they hope it works. Am I wrong?
I think what they're doing this offseason is starting to prove that Pete wants to run the ball again, and just try to do that, which clearly that doesn't work. But I guess he's just very... I said it on our podcast last year, the team's not going to improve until Pete Carroll goes away, and clearly he has a lot of pull in that organization, so I don't know when that'll be. So I'm sorry to that fan base. You're going to have to deal with wasting the prime years of a franchise elite future Hall of Fame quarterback. I deeply apologize.
Well, the good thing for them is that a lot of his destinations are currently taken up, right? You got super utility guy in New Orleans, Taysom Hill. You have the Red Rocket in Chicago and Andy Dalton. You have Dak coming off of an ankle injury. What was the fourth team? It was New Orleans, Chicago, Dallas. There might have been a fourth team. Regardless, those three spots are taken up. So now he's there. And instead of trying to make him happy and keep him there, you know, now you're just running the risk of another spot or organization opening up on his list and he try to force his way out.
The other team was the Raiders. So, I mean, they're looking good right now, too. So I'm sure that would be a good spot. The other team I don't want to bring up was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, not for new players that they've signed, but they've been able to basically bring back their entire core, which I think is a big thing as a defending Super Bowl champion. Tom was obviously not going to go anywhere, but you re-sign Gronk, you re-sign Shaq Barrett, you re-sign Levante David, you franchise Chris Godwin, so that the whole crew's coming back. I mean, this probably still makes them the favorites going into 2021. As the defending Super Bowl champion, you have the entire team back, the coaching staff. They did what they needed to do. They've won free agency so far.
Yeah, I don't see. They did win free agency because they kept everyone together. If we're looking in terms of who made the most movement, I would go with Tom's former team. We're really priming ourselves up for a Tom versus Bill Super Bowl. I think we're really priming ourselves up for that. I hope that's the case. We're going to get that matchup in the regular season too, but at this point, I mean, I heard they were interested in James White. We might as well trade them Julian Edelman too. I mean, I don't really want him on the Patriots anymore, so if they want him, they could take him. Listen, it's not nothing no disrespect to him, but we could draft a guy at 15 and then get like another pick out of Edelman. So, I don't know. Get younger and faster, I guess. But in any case, yeah, they definitely are winners in the sense that they retain the whole core. I would also say the Chiefs too, Ryan. I mean, we talked about how that offensive line imploded in the Super Bowl, and they go out and get, in my opinion, the best guard in football in Joe Thuney. I mean, you look at his stats with the Patriots over the past couple of years, it's kind of ridiculous what he did. So you go out and get Thuney, make some other moves. I think they got Kyle Long as well, one of the Longs. There's like four of them. You got him. So you're kind of building that depth up to where you're not going to have another scenario to where Patrick Mahomes is like afraid for his life in the biggest game of the year. So that's good. I think they were also up there as well with New England and Tampa Bay.
Even the Chargers made some good moves. They're a good example, a team that maybe the Seahawks could take some lessons from. When your quarterback had some offensive line issues, you maybe go out and try to help him. Well, that's what the Chargers did. They signed one of the best centers in football, Corey Linsley, to a deal. You get a guard in Matt Filer. So for a quarterback that was pressured a lot a season ago in Justin Herbert, this will help him. This will help him be a better player. So good for you, Los Angeles Chargers. My Philadelphia Eagles have signed a couple safeties and Joe Flacco. So, all right. Looking forward to the 2021 season. Really looking forward to it. Most excited I've been for an Eagles season in years. I can't remember the last time I was so just excited for the schedule to drop, to be honest with you. I will say I think the Anthony Harris signing was good. We needed a safety, so I'm excited about that. I think that he will be good, especially under this defense that Gannon wants to run. But yeah, there's not a lot of big money spending over here.
Next year, you're capped out right now. You're gonna endure what I watched this year, Ryan. So it's just 1 year. It'll pass.
Well, no, you know what the problem is? The problem is that we're going to have a fourth place schedule. Our 17th game is going to be against the Jets. We're in the worst division in football. So they're going to keep me reeled in for the entire season. Like, I can't go into the season like, you know what? 5-12. Okay, I've accepted it. Like, they're going to be competitive. They're going to keep me engaged until December. That's what I'm, like, upset about.
I give it until week 5 before your fan base starts calling for Flacco to start, because Hurts maybe has like 2 bad games sprinkled in. You're like 2-3 at that point. You're like, oh, Flacco's going to give us the push right to the playoffs. You know, we got these 3 winnable games right here, and then we'll be over 500 going into the bye. Like, I could totally see that entire scenario playing out. Not even knowing the schedule, not even knowing anything. Week 5 is what I'm giving it towards, for your fan base to just turn on Jalen Hurts entirely.
I really hope not. I think I get that he played for the Jets last year, but even before that, Joe looked kind of washed. I hope I never have to see him on the field in any situation. Fingers crossed. So that was NFL free agency. I mean, there are obviously a lot of people signed in different places. I mean, I didn't want to go through every signing. Like John Johnson, he went to the Cleveland Browns, so now Cleveland is an attractive free agent destination. As you alluded to earlier, Taysom Hill got a $140 million contract, which wasn't really a $140 million contract. I think that's been the best part about free agency for me, is seeing how all these front offices just try to one-up the rules by doing voidable years and incentives and just like everything else they can. So I think that the true winner of free agency has been the cap experts in the front offices. That's my winner.
Yeah, I've never heard any more conversation about the salary cap than I have this offseason. Except the Patriots, because they don't have to worry about it at all. So we're just, getting the company credit card and just going on a spending spree. But and even Cincinnati made some moves too, Ryan. I mean, they're trying to build for Joe Burrow a little bit whenever he comes back. He was at the Ohio game, I think, over the weekend. So good to see him kind of getting back towards playing shape. But yeah, the cap, Ryan. The Eagles don't have a lot of space. It's like the luxury tax in baseball. Everyone's trying to get under the luxury tax. You got to trade Mookie Betts, right? Got to trade your whole offensive line, right, Zach? Just got to get under the cap.
Well, yeah, unfortunately. So, do you have any other sports or non-sports things you want to make a point of before we close out this episode?
Not really. I mean, I've only watched basketball over the past month, so I couldn't really tell you what happened anywhere else. Your Flyers aren't doing so good. Bruins are we're gearing up for a potential Glenn versus Matt playoff matchup, is the way it's looking right now. So I get to do what you did last year, so that'll be fun.
Enjoy that. NASCAR update. They've now had 6 different winners in 6 races, so this has been Fox advertised it as the best season ever. It's still too early to say that, but it's been cool to see 6 different winners. Larson, Truex, Blaney, Byron, Bell, McDowell. So maybe you'll see another different winner this week when they're at Bristol Dirt. So if you've never watched a NASCAR race, maybe check this one out. I don't know if it'll be good. It could be really bad for all I know, but it's different. So maybe check that out. I don't care about the Flyers anymore. Not until 2022, 2021, 2022. Season's over. I don't care. They need to sell. Yeah, and that's that. Also, actually, I will say this. I watched the show on Netflix. It's called F is for Family. It was created by Bill Burr. I know Vince Vaughn was an EP. Joe Buck actually has a pretty decent part in it, surprisingly. And he doesn't sound like Joe Buck either, which is actually a lot funnier. Like, he did voices for this. F is for Family on Netflix. 4 seasons. They're doing a 5th season. It'll either release late this year or sometime next year, but that'll be the final one. Go check it out if you're looking for a new show. It's a lot of fun. A lot of good laughs, a lot of good hijinks. One of the Simpsons creators, I think, Michael Pierce, was part of the creation team for this too. So it's a lot of fun. I'd recommend it immensely.
Got to check it out. I, again, haven't watched much of anything, so I'll add it to the list. The bingeable shows list has grown tremendously over the past 5 months. So once we get to April, I'm just going to start cranking them out. You know, I got Schitt's Creek's on there. I know you're a big fan of that show. Got to watch that. Bunch of other stuff, too, that I just completely didn't get around to. Couple Gordon Ramsay shows that are on there that I wasn't too... I'm not good. You know what I realized is if it's not sports, I'm not good with live TV anymore, or like shows like that will premiere on, like, you know, basic cable every week, same time. I'm not good at those anymore. I don't know if you've had the same experience with that.
I couldn't tell you the last time I watched like a TV show live. Honestly,
Yeah.
I don't do it anymore.
Even with The Bachelor, I found myself either missing it entirely or watching it on demand. I mean, for me, the only live content is like sports that I'll watch, because like if you don't watch it live, there's no point in watching a game, in my opinion, right? I mean, you could watch a replay of a sports game, but it's not going to be the same. You already know the score going in. You already know what happened. No point in watching it. So, yeah, I've struggled with a lot of TV over the past, I mean, I would even say since before college, but especially now.
That's a good conversation to get into at some point on another episode. We can just do like a not sports discussion. Of course, we still have a lot to talk about with this podcast. Opening day for baseball is, I think, 9 days away. So we are still going to do our baseball preview, like we said. We're working on that. So that'll be out soon. We'll do another just regular episode next week, which is regular sports, talk college basketball and some other stuff. But that does it for, I think, episode number 33. So I want to thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you all again in the next episode.